Hello everyone, this is Stephanie. Welcome to another video. So today we're going to work on the Chiara bracelet. So I've taken one of the components from the Chiara earrings and one of the components from the pendant, and I put them together and made a bracelet. So this is what it looks like a little more close up. I just think it's so pretty. I love the Pacific opal crystals. I think they give it a bit of a casual feel, even though it's, it's very vintage looking. But I love the three of them together. I think they're so pretty. All right, so I'm going to clear this off. We'll get a materials list going and we'll get started. Let's get a materials list going. So you need some really beautiful crystals. So we have 8 millimeter Chiton Montes in a setting right here. And then we have these gorgeous cushion cuts, 12 millimeter cushion cuts. That color, amazing. Love it, that specific opal. You need some 4 millimeter pearls, some mini duos, 3 millimeter fire polish, 2 millimeter fire polish. I've got 2 colors of 11-0s. These are all Miyuki. I have an 8-0. I have a 15-0 seed bead. I've got a clasp, toggle clasp, and some jump rings right there. We've got some 4-pound fire line. You might be able to use 6. 4 worked very well for me. And I've got a needle on a little cushion, a size 11 beading needle, and then somewhere I threw in a stop bead. Here it is. So here we have a little stop bead. There you go. All right, so I think that's everything. So as usual, everything will be listed in the description box below the video. So don't forget to click that down arrow or the show more, the 3 dots. The box will open and so much information is down there. Any coupon codes I might have, all lists of color, shape, sizes, amounts, links to places to purchase if you need to. So I'm going to clip this off and we'll get started. Let's get started. So thread your needle with about 4 feet of thread, put on a stop bead and leave about a 12-inch tail. We'll use that tail. Picked up and dropped down to my stop bead, a mini duo and an 8-0, and I did that 8 times. Now I'm going to sew these into a circle by sewing through the first bead after my stop bead, right here, and I'm just going to go all the way around to reinforce all those beads. So I've reinforced, I've come all the way around, and I passed where my stop bead is, and I just went a little bit further and came out the bottom hole of a mini. So I'm going to sew through the top hole. And I like to do this because, go past the stop bead because it kind of completes the circle. So this is where I'm exiting. Okay, so I'm exiting the top hole of that mini duo. I'm going to pick up a fire polish and I'm going to sew through the top hole of the next one. Just like that. Then I'm going to pick up an 11-0, a pearl, and an 11-0, so that's a 4 millimeter pearl. And I'm going to sew through the top hole of the next mini. I'm just going to repeat this all the way around. So fire polish through the next mini, 11-0, pearl, 11-0, through the next one, just with my tail thread, like so. So you're going to just do that alternating all the way around. Okay, last 11-0 pearl, 11-0. Exiting this mini, I'm going to sew through this one, mini. I'm going to go right on through the fire polish and through the next mini duo. So just like that. Okay, next up, we're going to pick up an 11-0, a Duracoat, and an 11-0. Mix into this mini. I'm going to sew through the next one, and that's going to place those 3 beads right in front of that pearl. I'm going to advance through the next fire polish and the next mini. And do the same thing. 11-0, Duracoat, 11-0. Exiting this mini, I'm going to sew through this one, and I'll just go ahead and just go through the next, that fire polish as well, and then through the mini. Got it. Just going to repeat that. all the way around. Okay, we're putting on our last 11-0 Delica, 11-0, exiting this mini, sewing through this mini, the top hole of the next mini, and then I'm going to advance my needle through the next fire polish, the mini, top hole of that mini, and the 11-0 and the Delica of that first group here. So you want to be exiting the Delica, just like that. This is what we have so far. Okay, we're exiting the Delica right here. I'm going to pick up an 11-0, 5 15-0s, and an 11-0. Exiting the Delica, I'm going to sew through the next one. So just like that. Let's do that again. 11-0, 5 15-0s, and an 11-0. Exiting the Delica, I'm going to sew through the next one. So you're going to do that 2 more times. Okay, last 11-0, 5 15-0s, and 11-0. Forget that 11-0, I just forgot mine. Exiting the Delica, sewing through the next one. It's going to put on the bezel for the stone. So you're exiting the Delica right there. Let's position our stone. So I put mine in, so actually I put the flat part at the top and the sort of the corners over here opposite the fire polish. So just like that, force this all the way around. So I'm just going to hold it, exiting the Delica. I'm going to sew through all the beads, including the Delica. Like so. Don't get caught like I did. There you go. Keep doing that. Just going to do this all the way around, just reinforcing. So do that, come all the way around, so it's 2 more times, and then I want you to exit an 11-0 before a Delica. Okay, so I'm exiting an 11-0 before Delica. Now I'm going to reinforce again, only I'm going to skip the Delicas, and that's going to just pull it in just a little bit. So exiting this 11-0, I'm just going to skip the Delica, and I'm going to sew through all the 11-0, 5 15-0s on the 11-0. Do that again, skipping the Delica, sewing through all this group here. Again. So you just want to do this all the way around until you've completed everything. And that'll give it sort of this sort of pulled in look a little bit and tighten things up. So if you're happy and you don't want to, you can go around again, but I think it's fine at this point. I'm exiting the 11-0. I'm going to sew through the Delica, just like that. So we're exiting a Delica. I'm going to pick up 3 15-0s and I'm going to sew from the Delica to the fire polish. Those sit right there. I'm going to pick up 3 15-0s. Exiting the fire polish, I'm going to sew through the Delica. So I'm just going to repeat that all the way around. 3 15-0s, exiting the Delica, through the fire polish, 3 15-0s, from fire polish to the Delica. Got it. Just going to continue that until you have all your 15-0s on. Last 3 15-0s from the fire polish to this Delica, like so. This is what we have so far. So exiting a Delica, we put all those 15-0s on. Now we're going to add one more round. So we're exiting the delicate. I'm going to sew through the first 3 15-0s, the fire polish. I'm going to pick up a 15-0. I'm going to sew through the 11-0 right before the purl. And then another 15-0, I'm going to sew through the purl. I'm going to pick up a 15-0. I'm going to sew through the 11-0 on the other side of the purl. I'm going to pick up a 15-0. I'm going to sew through the fire polish. So we're just going to repeat this, keep doing this all the way around. So do it one more time. 15-0, exiting the fire polish. Sew through the 11-0, 15-0, through the purl, 15-0, through the 11-0, 15-0, you got it, through the fire polish, and so on. So I'll let you just go off and finish that, and then we'll work on the back. So I've turned to the back, taken off my stop bead, threaded a needle. You'll be exiting one of the minis. I'm going to pick up an 11-0, a 15-0, an 11-0, and a 15-0. Exiting this mini, I'm just going to sew through the next one, the next 8-0, and the next mini. And I'm just going to push it over with my thumb. It's not going to stay. We're going to put another bead through the top, the points of all of them, and that will make everything connect nicely. So 15-0, 11-0, 15-0. Exiting the mini, I'm going to sew through the next mini, 8-0 mini, and they'll be kind of like so. So you're going to do that 2 more times. Okay, last 15-0, 11-0, 15-0, exiting the mini, I'm going to sew through this mini, the 8-0, and the next mini. And we'll push those down as we go. And then I'm going to sew up through the first 15-0 and the 11-0 of that first little point right there. So just like that, and you can kind of push these down a little bit. I'm going to pick up a delica. I'm exiting the 11-0 up here. I'm going to sew through the next one. Now at any time, if you need to put more beads on or a bigger bead, you can do that. You know, sometimes when you do the back of something, it just depends on your tension, whatever. So if you find that you need to just fill in more, just play with some of your, the 15-0s there. I think this is going to be fine. So here I'm just going through all of them, adding a delica. Yeah, that looks good. And then you just want to reinforce all the way around, and then your back, you can sew that thread in and your back will be done. Okay, so we're going to actually bezel this 8mm Monty in the setting. Thread your needle with about 3 feet of thread, put on a stop bead, and leave enough of a tail to sew in. Okay, so I'm going to hold my piece like so, and I'm going to sew through these 2, fuzz out of there. I'm going to sew through these 2 holes right here, so corresponding to this corner where this prong is. No beads on my needle, just doing it like so. Then I'm going to pick up 3 11-0s, and I'm going to go back around again. So just like so. Okay, so this is where we're exiting. So I've put those 3 beads on. I'm just going to go around again, just to sort of secure this a little bit on the edge. So just going through those beads again and back through, the holes on the little setting. So just like that. Okay, so we're exiting this hole here. I'm just going to pick up 3 11-0s. I'm going to sew through this corner. So the next hole to get these 3 on the corner like that. And then I'm going to just come through the beads again. I'm going to give it a little pull like so. So what I have so far, we can go ahead and reinforce these as well. So you'll just go around again. Okay, I don't know how necessary that is. Did I say that already? But it makes it a little bit more snug. Okay, so I'm exiting that 11-0. I'm going to sew through, just with no beads on my needle, the next corner, like that. So this is what I have so far. Again, I'm going to pick up 3 11-0s. Exiting here, I'm going to sew back through this one, through that hole. If you like, you can go ahead and just do that twice. Like so. So we have our third corner on. So we're exiting that opening there, that hole there. I'm going to pick up 3 11-0s. I'm going to sew through the next one and then back to the one I'm exiting. And then I'm going to just go through the beads again, like we've been doing. Oops. Like that. And I might as well just go ahead and reinforce this last group of 3 beads. So just like that. Okay, this is what we have so far. We have the 4 corners have the 3 11-0s embellishing. Exiting here, I'm going to pick up my 2mm fire polish and I'm going to sew through the next 3. And this is where it's going to sort of the structure, we're going to get some structure going so it's not so loose. Just like so. Do that again. Just going to do that all the way around. Like that. So I'll just let you do that 2 more times. Last 2mm through these 3 11-0s. And then on through that next fire polish bead. Okay, so you're going to reinforce all the way around and exit a fire polish. Okay, next up, I'm going to pick up an 3 11-0s, but I've picked up the matte, a shiny, and the matte color. Exiting the fire polish, I'm going to sew through the next fire polish. I'm going to make sure that sits just like so. I'm going to do that again. 3 11-0s, just, you know, whatever colors you would like to use. I just like getting the shiny gold in between the matte because it gives it a little pop. So here, next group. So you're going to do that 2 more times. Last 3 11-0s, exiting the little 2mm fire polish, I'm going to sew through that final one. Still holding it, although it's staying much better now. So if I just let go of it, it's kind of okay now. It's not loose anymore, but I'm still going to hold it as I go along. So I'm exiting the fire polish bead right there. Okay, so I'm exiting the fire polish. I'm just going to advance my needle through the next 3 11-0s. So this is what we have so far. Okay, this is what we have so far. So we're exiting the 3 11-0s on the side, you know, the matte and the shiny and then the matte. I'm going to pick up my fire polish bead and I'm going to sew through the next group of 3. So just like so. I'm going to do that all the way around. So I'll let you do the last 2 and then we'll continue. Last fire polish through these 3. And then I'm just going to advance my needle right through the next fire polish bead. Just like that. So we're exiting the fire polish bead. I'm going to pick up an 11-0, a 4mm pearl, and an 11-0. Just like that. I'm exiting here. I'm just going to sew around the other side of that fire polish bead. So just like that. Okay, now I'm just going to advance my needle through the next 11-0, those 3 11-0s right there, and the next fire polish. Like that. I mean, if you want to put something, instead of going through these 3 11-0s and out the fire polish, you can always go through the fire polish, add maybe 3 or 4 or whatever, something here, and then go through this one. But I think I'm just going to leave it like this. I think that looks fine, but you can play with it and really, kind of, design, do a little designing. We'll do the same thing again, 11-0, 4mm pearl, 11-0, exiting the fire polish. I'm going to sew through the other side of the fire polish, and then I'm going to advance my needle through the next 3 11-0s, like so, and the fire polish. Oops. Don't get caught. There we go. That's better. And then you're going to put the pearl on this one and go do this one, and then I'll meet you at the end. So do that 2 more times. Last 11-0, pearl 11-0, exiting right here. I'm going to sew through the other side of that fire polish bead, get my last little group on there, and then I'm just going to advance my needle through the next 3 11-0s. I just want to complete the circle. And so this is what I have so far. Okay, this is what we have so far. So before we go on, I'm going to turn it on the back. And I want to do a little work on the back. So I moved ahead a little bit, but I think I was exiting one of the holes on the actual setting. So I just moved my thread over so I was coming out of the 2mm fire polish there. So you'll just want to be exiting right there. I'm going to pick up an 11-0. I'm exiting the little fire polish. I'm going to sew through the pearl. So it's just going to secure this a little bit. And I'm going to pick up another 11-0. I'm going to sew back through the fire polish. Okay, and you're really not going to see that from the front. You might see a little bit of the gold, but that's okay. So now we've kind of secured that corner. I'm going to advance through the next 3 11-0s and the 2mm. I'll do that again. 11-0 through the pearl. 11-0. Kind of lost my 11-0s here. Here we go. 11-0 back through the fire polish, just like that. So you can do that 2 more times, and then that just secures it so this pearl is not flopping around. All right, so do that 2 more times, then come back and we'll go back to the front. So I put on my last, I'm still in the back here. I put on my last 11-0s, around the pearl, and I've exited the 2mm, so just sew around here and tie some 1/2-inch knots, and then you're nice and secure and your pearls are going to stay in place. Okay, we're on the front now, and remember we left off exiting these 3 11-0s in the interior, so I'm going to sew right through this 11-0 that's on the side of the pearl. I'm going to pick up a 15-0 and I'm going to sew through the pearl like that. I'm going to pick up a 15-0. I'm going to sew through this 11-0, and then I'm going to move on through the next 3 11-0s right there, and then through the 11-0 on the side of the pearl. I'm going to add a 15-0 through the pearl, 15-0 through the 11-0 on the other side of the pearl. You got it. And just keep moving around, adding those little 15-0s on the side of the pearl. After those 11-0s. Make sure I didn't get caught there. No, I didn't. Okay, so you're just going to do that all the way around. Okay, let's sew a couple of units together. So I went ahead and I did a thread path. I started the thread path because my big fingers were getting in the way. So so we're going to sew these together like so. This is going to be held in square shape, and this is going to be held in the diamond shape. So you want to be exiting this 15-0 right here after the pearl. It could be the top one also, but just as it is, I'm exiting this one here because we're just going to go around in a circle. So we're exiting the top 15-0 here, just like that. I'm sewing through. Now, if you have a thread left over, you can just move your thread to your exiting that 15-0 or add a thread and just come through this 15-0. You know, sew through this 15-0, this 11-0, the 3 11-0s here, this 11-0 and this 15-0. So that's your thread path. Pause it now, and you know, so you can get that thread path done. And I'm coming around. So out of the 15-0, I'm just going to come back through the 15-0, the purl, and the 15-0. So this is our thread path so far. Okay, so here's our thread path. We're exiting the 15-0 above the purl. I'm going to pull it in tight now, and I'm going to sew through. I'm going to skip this 15-0 right here, and I'm going to sew through the next 11-0 right here. So I'm skipping that 15-0. It's like doing a picot, only it's not really making a picot, it's just going to pull it in tight. So through the 11-0, through these 3 11-0s, like that. See that? And then you're going to go through this 11-0 right here. So just the 11-0, like that. You're going to skip that 15-0 right there, and I'm going to sew back through the 15-0, the purl, and the 15-0. And that's going to give us a super secure connection. Now you just want to go ahead and reinforce this all the way around until it feels nice and secure. And that's how you're going to. Okay, so you're just going to keep connecting your units. I have a couple more to do, or yeah, I think one more to do. So if you're connecting using the smaller unit, let's say your thread's coming out of a smaller unit, you're doing the exact same thing. You're just going around in a circle. So I'm going to need another larger unit for my size wrist, because when I use 3 larger units and 4 of the smaller units, I come out with 5 inches. And if I had a really tiny wrist, I could, with the clasp, would be probably about 6.5. So if I had, that is slightly too small for me. So I'm going to add another unit on. So you can really end it any way you like. So you can end it with both of the small units at the end, both of the large units at the end, or one of each. So this would just be sort of continuing on my sequence. So what fits best for me is adding the larger one. And when it comes together with the clasp, it's going to... Okay, so I've prepared my clasp by adding a jump ring to the end of the toggle ring, because I want to sew in this direction. And then I added 3 jump rings, and I have to tighten that one a little bit, on the toggle bar, so I can sew in this direction. I'll close that up in a minute. So just like that, and that gives me a little bit of length to get through the toggle ring. You could add more, just make sure the last one you add is in the direction you want to sew. All right, so here we go, let's put on the clasp. So I threaded my needle with about a foot of thread, put on a stop bead, left a tail to sew in. So I've sewn through the 15-0 purl and 15-0 on the end of this unit. I added an 11-0, a 15-0, a 4mm purl, and an 11-0. I'm going to come through my toggle, the jump ring on my toggle ring here. I'm going to pick up an 11-0, up 4mm purl, a 15-0, and an 11-0, and I'll show you in a sec. So just like that, I've come through the ring, I picked up the 11-0, the purl, the 15-0, and the 11-0. Just going to drop those down like that, and I'm just going to sew right back through the 15-0 purl and the 15-0, and we'll kind of organize everything as we go. So just like that. What it looks like so far. So I'm going to reinforce by coming through all the beads again. Just make sure you get all of them. Like that, and I'm going to go right through the 15-0 purl 15 again, 15-0 again, like that. This is what we have so far. A little sort of picot on the end. So I'm exiting the 15-0 right here. I'm going to sew through the, I'm going to skip the 11-0, sew through the 15-0, the purl, and everything until we get to the other side again. Just going to give that a little pull and make that pop out. So hold it with your finger and give it a pull. So see how that pops out a little bit. Then I'm going to continue through all the beads until I get to that next 15-0 after the purl. So just like so. Now I'm going to skip the 11-0 and I'm going to sew through the 15-0, purl 15-0 again, and I'm going to give this a nice pull. And you want to make sure that you push that bead out, that 11-0 out, so that it makes a picot. There we go. I had to give it a little help. Okay, just sew those threads in, and then we'll do the other side. Clasp. Using the smaller unit. I think what I did is I just left off one seed bead. I think it just looked better. So you're threading your needle, foot or so of thread, stop bead, tail to sew in, sew through all the beads again. So you're exiting this 15-0 at the top here. I added an 11-0, a purl 11-0, came through the ring, 11-0, purl 11-0. I'm going to sew through all the beads again. Trying to get my needle through without grabbing a thread, so just like that. So now we're connected. I'm going to sew through. So I'm exiting this 11-0. I'm going to sew through this 11-0. So the next 11-0. Come on, you. There we go. I'm going to skip the next one, which is a 15-0, right here, and I'm going to sew through this 11-0. I'm in a very awkward position. Here we go. This 11-0 and the purl. We're going to make that into a picot. We'll do that. We'll pull that in a second. And then through the purl, through the two 11-0s, under the ring, and the ring, and then the purl. Now I'm just going to give that a pull so that that sort of pops up a little bit like a picot. So I think our picot on this side, we're making it with the 15-0 at the top, which is fine. So then we're going to go through this 11-0. Going to skip this 11-0. I'm going to sew through this one, and then all the 11-0s again. Let me just get through this one first. Make sure that bead's going to pop up there. There we go. Give it a nice little pull. And then just go around and reinforce everything again. And we're done, and I think it came out so pretty. I love the combo of, the pieces from, the component from here and the component from the earrings to make a bracelet. It looks so pretty together. I don't think it's too much. I think the Pacific Opal color gives it a casualness that I think you could wear all summer. And it's such a beautiful summery color. So just to show you on the wrist, that's about what it looks like. So it's not over, it's not gigantic. All right, so there you go. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you make it and post it on Facebook and in all different colors. I think it would be beautiful, like in any color that you love. All right, so take care and I'll see you next time. Bye.